Hello, everyone. Hello. Happy Wednesday. Happy workshop day. Very excited to be here for today's monthly workshop for December. This is how to create profitable offers. And I wanted to do this workshop this month. I know the last couple of months we've been really kind of talking about budgeting and goal setting and kind of getting ready for the new year. And this to me is actually one of the key components of getting ready for the new year is really, I don't know if you're anything like me, you may be going through the things that you offer, whether it's physical products, whether it's services, whether it's digital products, and just really thinking about what you're going to offer next year. Right? Like this always feels like a good time to, hold on, I'm going to adjust here. Always feels like a good time to kind of do that cleanup, that analysis, make sure that you know what you're offering next year and you're happy with whatever that is. So I wanted to do this workshop today because one of the things that I see happen too often is that people have offers out there. And again, when I say offer, I'm talking about I'm talking about offering a physical product, a digital product, or a service. So it can be anything. And I'm going to use the word product. I'm going to use the word offer a lot throughout today's workshop. And I'm referring to any one of those. So no matter what you sell, this is going to be applicable. But I see too often what happens is people who have an offer don't really understand whether or not that offer is profitable and to what extent. And I've actually worked with clients before who have come to me, and when we actually factor in the value of their time into the offer, it turns out the offer is actually not profitable. So a lot of times, oh, my itchy eyes are killing me today. A lot of times, folks will come to me and say, I feel like I'm working so hard. I have clients. Why do I feel like I can never get ahead? I don't feel like my business is growing. And a lot of times this is why, because you're not actually creating and offering profitable offers. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to go ahead and dive into the slides here. I also want to pull up real fast. Bear with me 1 second. And also, it's so dry in here today, y'all. I've had the fireplace on, which is nice, but I need some lotion. So bear with me. We're a little bit of a hot mess today. And what is that funky noise? Oh, because I pulled up Kajabi and now it's like giving the chat thing. So I wanted to also show you, because there is a tool in your membership platform called we've probably called it the profit calculator. That's usually what I call it. And so you have access to this. So I want to sort of like the disclaimer for today is that, ooh, that smells so good. I think it's cinnamon apple. The disclaimer for today is that today is going to be a very math heavy day. It's going to be a very numbers heavy day. So stick with me. I've got slides and I've got examples so you can see it all if you're a visual person, which I am. But it is going to be a very math heavy day. But what we have in your membership, and hold on a hot second, now I got to find it. Here we go. Let's log into the membership, is the profit calculator, which we'll do a lot of what we're going to do today. So you don't have to sit there and kind of manually do the math yourself. And I just want to make sure I know where it is. Sources. You know what? Now, why am I not? Oh, you know what? It's probably in, hold on. And if it's not here, I'm going to be super embarrassed and we're going to get it there. I promise. I'm actually not seeing it here, y'all. So I apologize for that. We will get it up there by the time if you're watching this in the replay, by the time you do that, you will see it up there. I'm also hot as hell, so I'm gonna take this off. So it'll be up on your membership platform. It's called the Profit Calculator. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the presentation today. Oh, this is so annoying. Sorry, give me a hot second. We are struggling today. We are riding the struggle bus. All right. Hold on. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Hold on 1 second. I swear it's I was off last week for the Thanksgiving holiday, and I'm telling you, as much as I love being, having a week off, and it was awesome, and I got to sort of relax and rejuvenate, I feel like I'm still kind of struggling to get in the swing of things. So okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, perfect. So I apologize that we don't have this up and running yet. Give me a hot second. Having a slight issue just pulling it up, but I know what the issue is. I'm fixing it. We are good to go. Okay, cool. Here we go. So let me hit present. All right. And again, if you're just tuning in live, I did mention that this is a very numbers, math heavy day. Stick with me. If you all have questions, please put them in the comments. Happy to answer them live. If you are watching on the replay and you've got questions, bring them to the Q&A or just post them in the Facebook group and we'll get them answered for you. And then again, you will have access to the profit calculator, which will do a lot of this calculation for you. And if we have time, I know we're running a little bit behind. If we have time, I will pull up the profit calculator and I will show you how to work through that, okay? So how to create profitable offers. Let's go ahead and dive in. So first, I want to talk about really briefly why this matters. And if you've watched previous workshops or you've watched some of the core content in the membership, you already know this stuff. This is not going to be brand new to you. But I've said this before, I will say it till I'm blue in the face. Your business's health is determined by its profits, not by its revenues, not by how many clients you have, but by its profits, and actually also by its cash flow. Because at the end of the day, profits are what you make, not revenues. You can have, and this is the example I always give, you can have $1 million revenue business, and in one situation have $990,000 of expenses so that you only have $10,000 in profits, and in another have $10,000 of expenses so that you have $990,000 of profits. Two very different businesses in terms of the health and success of the business, both $1 million revenue businesses, okay? Profits enable you to invest back into your business. So if you want to grow your business, this is how you do it, is you have profits that you can then turn around and put those profits back into the business to grow them. So for example, if you get all of your leads from Facebook ads, instead of pocketing your profits, or whatnot, or going on a big, going on a big trip or buying t-shirts for everybody or something, you could put those profits back into more Facebook ads so you can bring in more leads, and that's how you grow your business. And profits also enable you to pay yourself well, right? This is what we all hope for, is that we're not just going to be able to pay ourselves reasonable compensation, but that our business is going to grow. We're going to have more and more profits, and we'll be able to bring in a lot more money. Also, and I said this as we were just kind of kicking things off, but many newer businesses are losing money on their offers, and they may not necessarily realize it. Again, you may be positive cash flow, but once you factor in, this is especially true for service-based business owners, once you factor in the value of your time, you may actually be losing money on those offers. So we're going to talk about all of that today, but that's why this matters. That's why this is all super important. Okay, I am also going to go ahead. Hold on. I'm going to turn off this. I always forget to turn this off when we're doing the membership, so I apologize. That was kind of blocking. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just do a very brief overview of what the heck profit is anyway. This is probably very obvious. Y'all probably already know this, but again, it's going to be a math heavy day, and so I want to make sure we start off on the right foot. So how do we calculate profit, generally speaking? Well, it's pretty simple. It's revenues minus expenses. So revenues meaning the money coming in, expenses meaning the money going out. The answer or the result are your profits. Okay. I'm like checking out this, I'm like, what is this girl doing? We got this little miniature woman next to this massive calculator, and she's like, I don't even know what she's doing. I just saw this graphic and I was like, this is a weird graphic. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so then I want to dive down a little bit and really dig a bit deeper into profit. So what we have is then, and these are not official terms, but these are what I'm calling them, is business profit, which would be profits for the entire business. And then product profits, meaning profits for each product line. And again, when I say product line, a product line can be, it can be a physical product, it can be a digital product, or it can be a service. So I'm using the word product very loosely throughout this workshop, okay? So your business profit, again, pretty obvious, are the total revenues for the business minus the total expenses for the business, and that gets you to business profit. Your product profit, this is where it gets a little more complicated, and this is what we're going to dive into today. So stick with me here. Your product profit are your product revenue, so the revenues for that specific product, minus the direct expenses for that product. We're going to talk about what those are in a second, minus your overhead expenses that have been allocated to that product. We'll talk about that in a second as well. So don't worry if you don't understand all those aspects. We'll get there. But the product profit are the product revenues minus the product direct expenses minus the allocated overhead expenses to that product. Okay. All right. So first things first, let's talk about those direct expenses versus those overhead expenses. So your direct expenses are things that are related to a specific product, service, customer, or project. So these are cost expenses that are directly related to the thing that you're selling. So this could be, for example, direct labor. Let's just say you are, what would be a good example? I'm like blanking on examples right now. All right, let's just say you had a membership, an online membership, and you have a community for the membership, an online community, and you hire someone and their sole job is to manage the community for that membership. Then the cost of paying them would be a direct expense because it's directly connected to that membership. That person does not do anything else in the business. None of the other product lines benefit from that person, just the membership. So that would be direct labor. Direct materials, including raw materials. So if you did make a physical product, this would be, if you made, I always look for stuff at my desk and I'm like, I don't know. If you made notebooks, and you bought paper and you bought, fabric for the front, all of those would be raw materials that would go into making the notebook. Commissions. So again, if you pay commissions, that's specifically connected to a product or a service that you're selling. Manufacturing supplies. So these would be, again, this is physical products, but if you bought, I don't even know. I'm trying to think of products and what manufacturing supplies would be. But if you made something with a 3D printer and you sold it, and so you bought the 3D printer, that would be a manufacturing supply, and it would be a direct expense as long as it's only used to make the product that's being sold. On the flip side, your overhead expenses are the cost of maintaining and running the business kind of generally. So this would be rent for any office space. It could be internet. It would be advertising and marketing expenses. So your email service provider, your website, things like that. Salaries, again, unless the person is specifically connected to one product or service. Office supplies. So expenses that affect and benefit more than one product line. So for example, in my business, I have a virtual assistant. She doesn't just support my course or my membership or my coaching. She supports everything in my business. So her salary is an overhead expense. It's not a direct expense. On the flip side, now this is not the case anymore, but on the flip side, when I just had my course and I paid for Kajabi to host my course, Kajabi could have been considered a direct expense of my course because that was the only thing it was used for. Now we use it for more. We use it for the membership. We use it for our tax days and our workshops and a few other things. So now it's not a direct expense for one particular product or service. It supports a lot of different things. So now we consider that more of an overhead expense. But those would be examples of direct expenses and overhead expenses. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. And again, to go back to our formula here, this matters because when we're calculating the profit for a particular product, we all of the direct expenses for that product get subtracted from the revenues, but only a portion of the overhead expenses do. Let's take your website, right? If you've got a course and a membership and coaching like I do, your website supports all three. So it wouldn't be appropriate to put the expense of the website just to the course or just to the membership or just to the coaching. It needs to be allocated among the three. And we're going to talk about how you do that in a second. Y'all might hear my dog. He just came in from his walk and he's drinking a ton of water. So hopefully that's not too loud. I apologize. Okay, so let's talk about how we actually allocate those overhead expenses, right? So a couple of calculations we've got to do to get there. The first calculation we have to do is for something called the overhead allocation percentage. So this is essentially the percentage of overhead expenses that we're going to allocate to each different product line. Now, again, I have a course, I have a membership, and I have coaching. So what I would do, and I tend to do this on a yearly basis. You could do it more often if you want. I don't think you need to. I think once a year is appropriate. But once a year, I would basically sit down and calculate the overhead allocation percentage for my course, for my membership, and for my coaching. And the way you calculate this percentage is you take your product revenues, so the revenues for the product, divided by your total revenues. So, and I just pulled some numbers here. So in this example, the product revenues, let's just say for my online course, are $40,000. My total revenues for the business are $100,000. So the overhead allocation percentage is 40%. That means that 40% of the overhead expenses are going to be allocated to the product revenues. Now, when I pull these numbers, product revenues and total revenues, typically I'm pulling them from the prior year. So when I'm sitting down to kind of do my profit calculation for the future year to figure out where I want, if my offers are profitable, I'm typically going to pull those numbers from the prior year. We're going to talk, I think we've got an example coming up where we're going to talk about what to do if you don't have those yet, but bear with me. If not, I promise I'll come back and address that. So once you get the overhead allocation percentage, then you need to calculate the actual overhead expenses allocated to the product. So 40%, that was our percentage. So the way we do this is we take the total overhead expenses times the overhead allocation percentage. So in this example, our total overhead expenses are $25,000 for the year. We're going to multiply that by 40%. That gets us $10,000. So that means on a product that brought in $40,000 of revenues, we're going to allocate $10,000 of overhead expenses to that product. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Again, let me know if y'all have any questions. Okay, I'm just giving a second for everybody to see the slide before I move on. Okay, so now what I want to do is talk about, okay, how we're actually going to calculate profit for the product that we just did the overhead calculation for. So again, we've got a couple of calculations we've got to do here before we can get to profit. The first, or I shouldn't say before we can get to profit, but before we get the full answer. So the first is product profit itself. So the way we do this is our product revenues. Remember, we've already seen this formula. Product revenues minus product direct expenses minus allocated overhead expenses. That gets us to our product profit. So same example, I haven't changed the numbers, $40,000 in product revenues. Now in this example, I'm saying that we have $5,000 in direct expenses for this product. That could be labor, it could be materials, whatnot. We have $10,000 in allocated overhead expenses. We know that because that's what we just calculated, right? We've got that. So the $40,000 minus the $5,000 minus the $10,000 is $25,000 in profits. So on $40,000 of revenues for a particular product, we have $25,000 in product profits. Now, the next thing we need to calculate is something called product margin. This is a percentage. And the way we do this is we take the product profit that we just calculated and we divide it by the product revenues. So, and that gets us profit margin. So we're going to take the $25,000, that was the product profit that we just calculated. We're going to divide that by the product revenues, $40,000, and that gets us a profit margin of 62.5%. So what that means is that for every dollar in revenue or every amount in revenue, it doesn't have to be a dollar, for every amount of revenue, 62.5% of that is going to be profit to us. Or to put another way, if you look at the green box at the bottom, for every $100 in revenues we bring in, we keep $62.50 in profits. That's a pretty good profit margin. I'll take that any day, 62.5% or $62.50. Does that make sense? Hopefully that does. So that's how we calculate the profit on our products, okay? Again, product meaning product, service, digital product, whatever it may be. I did want to discuss the numbers thing, but we're not, I really swear we put this on a slide. So if, because I'm guessing what some of y'all are thinking is, okay, great, but I'm not sure I know all these numbers, right? So I promise we will cover that if it's not on a slide, but I think it is. The next thing I want to talk about is allocating labor. So if you go back a hot second, let me go back to, well, I guess to this slide, where we talked about labor. You can have direct labor, which is a direct expense, or you can have labor, like salaries, for example, be part of your overhead expenses. What I like to do, and this, I shouldn't even say what I like to do, what is really important that you do, and this is of particular importance if you are in the service-based in a service-based industry. So if you're providing services, if you're providing physical products or digital products, this is still important, but it's probably less important because I'm going to guess that you're not going to have one product that is more labor intensive than another. So for example, if I sell digital courses, and I have 3 courses, and not to say this isn't the case, but it's probably the case that the time I put into each is not that different from each other. But if you have a service that you offer, so my business, I have a course, I have a membership, and I do one-on-one coaching. The labor that I put into one-on-one coaching is so much greater, like significantly so, than the time I put into my course or my membership. So what would happen if I included my salary in overhead expenses? What would end up happening was my salary would get allocated to my 3 products, course, membership, coaching, based on the revenues for each, right? Okay. But that's probably not a good way to do it. Because remember, I just said that my time is disproportionately spent on coaching, not the course, not the membership. So if I included my salary and overhead expenses, it would get allocated based on revenues, and it would probably over allocate my salary to the course and the membership, where I spend very little time, and under allocate my salary to the coaching, where I spend most of my time. And so it would essentially inflate the profit of my coaching, and it would underrepresent the profit of my course and my membership. So that's why we're going to allocate labor. Now, I want to be very clear here. You only do this where there's a disproportionate amount of labor spent on any one particular product line. And it could be your labor or it could be someone else's. My virtual assistant, for example, I would absolutely include her salary in overhead expenses. She supports my course, she supports my memberships, she supports my coaching. I would not say that she supports any one of those that much more than any others. She probably supports the membership the most, the course the second the most, and the coaching the least, but it's not enough of a difference between the 3 to make it worth me sitting down and really thinking it through. So with her, I'm going to put her salary into overhead expenses, and I'm going to let it be allocated based on the revenues of each product. With my salary, though, it absolutely does matter, but for the reasons I just explained, okay? So the steps in allocating labor, number 1, to calculate or determine the hourly wage. We're going to talk about how to do that in a second. And number 2, to determine the labor allocable to each product. We're going to do that as well. So first step, calculate or determine the hourly wage. Now, if you have employees that are paid on an hourly basis, you're going to use the hourly rate you pay them. It's that simple. There's no calculation. That's just what it is. If you pay them $30 an hour, you're going to use $30 an hour. Now I'm cold again. Hold on. Okay. But for everyone else, if you have people on salary, or if it's yourself, and you may not be on salary, but you've paid yourself money, then you're going to do this calculation that we're about to do in a second. So if your owner's pay, the amount that you paid yourself over the course of the year is $120,000 per year, or $10,000 per month. That's the first step, is what is that? What is the amount that you've paid yourself on a monthly or an annual basis? Doesn't matter. Just figure out what that number is. And then the next thing you're going to do is estimate the hours you work every month. Now, this is an average. It doesn't have to be perfect. These numbers do not have to be exact. But I have said, okay, and I did this for my business. These are my numbers. So I have said, okay, $120,000 a year or $10,000 a month. On average, I work about 160 hours per month. That's 40 hours per week. I mean, again, it's probably not always true, but it's on average about right. So my estimated hourly wage is $62.50. Excuse me, because basically what I did was I took the $10,000 a month divided by 160 hours per month, and that got me $62.50. Now, I want to be very clear here. This number that we're calculating here, this is not the number that, if you're going to go sell a 1-hour strategy call, you're going to sell it for this, okay? This is nothing to do with your pricing. This is just the cost of your time. When I sell a 1-hour strategy call, so much more goes into that 1 hour. In fact, I forget what our current rate is. I think it's $250. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is number one, there's administrative work to even get that strategy call in the books. Number two, there's pre-work, meaning I prep for those calls. I don't just show up. Number two, there's post-work. So for for a 1 hour strategy call, we usually are looking at about 3 hours of work. So that's why they're priced at $250. That's one of the reasons. Another one of the reasons is because of my skills and my experience and what my time warrants, right? So this number that we're calculating here has nothing to do with pricing. This is just based on what I'm paying myself and what that works out to be in terms of an hourly wage so that I can allocate this expense. Okay? Make sense? So once we've calculated this, the next step is to determine how much labor gets allocated to each product. So in the example I've given here, we've got two products. Two products. So product number one, I spend about 20 hours a month on. Product number two, I spend about 80 hours a month on. Now that's only 100 hours. Remember, I said I worked 160 hours a month. And that's because that remaining 60 hours isn't directly allocable to one product or another. This could be time spent on doing Facebook Lives, doing marketing, advertising, administrative work, networking, things that aren't specifically related to one product or another. Those go into the overhead bucket. So I've said overhead is 60 hours a month. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that $10,000 a month that I pay myself, and I'm going to allocate it based on this breakout. So 20 hours per month is 12.5%, 20 divided by 160. 80 hours per month for product two is 50%, 80 divided by 160 hours. And overhead is 37.5%, 60 hours divided by 160 hours, okay? So then I'm going to take those percentages and I'm going to multiply them by the $10,000 a month. So what I've done here is I've determined that I should allocate $1,250 every single month towards product one in my labor costs, $5,000 per month to product number two in my labor costs, and $3,750 a month for overhead for my labor costs. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. I see a couple folks watching live. So if this is a lot, if you've got questions, please drop them in the comments. Let me know. Otherwise, I'm gonna assume this makes sense. I know this is a lot of math. I promise y'all I get it. Okay. Okay. So once and actually, sorry, before we hop on to the next thing, I want to go back real fast. Here we go. This was actually our example, but this will work. I want to go back real fast and just reiterate why we just did that exercise. Because in the calculation for product profit, product revenues minus product direct expenses minus allocated overhead expenses, we're going to get a more accurate answer if we include labor in the direct expenses, if there is a disproportionate amount of labor for one product over another. So again, I think I've got one more example in here, if I'm not mistaken, that will show this. But again, if I offer one-on-one coaching and I have a course, more than likely I'm putting more of my time into the coaching than I am the course. So I wouldn't want to just throw my salary into overhead because it's not going to get allocated appropriately based on how much time I'm actually spending in each product. Okay. So once we understand all of this, now we're actually going to look at, well, what is the process for creating a profitable offer? And there are 4 steps. Number 1, understand who you are serving and how. Number 2, map out your offer. Number 3, calculate your projected profit per product. We just learned how to do that. And number 4, assess and adjust. We're going to go through each of these 4 steps, and I've got an example too, okay? So step number 1, who and how. When you're creating your profitable offer, the first thing you want to do is identify the following. Number 1, your ideal customer. Number 2, their main problem or pain point that you're trying to solve. And number 3, how you can help them solve the problem. Now, we're not going to go into in this workshop how to do each of these things. I've talked about this in other ones, and it's not exactly what we focus on in this membership anyway. But the reason this is the first step is because even though a profitable offer really is about the numbers, if you're not offering something that speaks to your ideal audience, then it's never going to be profitable, even if the numbers in theory work out, meaning you're not going to sell enough to make it worth it, right? So that's why this is step number 1, is make sure that your profitable offer hits these, checks off each of these. Okay, the second thing you're going to do is map out your offer. This is where you're going to literally lay out what's the price point, what are the outputs, meaning what are you going to give that the customer gets, and what are the inputs, meaning what will it take for you to deliver the product. And again, we've got an example. We'll walk through all of this. Step number 3, calculate your projected profit. We've already learned how to do all of these things: overhead allocation percentage, allocate your overhead costs, allocate your labor costs, calculate your expected profits or projected profits, and calculate your expected profit margin. Here we go. I knew I had a note in here somewhere. So this note at the bottom says, when you are calculating for a product that you haven't, that you don't yet sell, you haven't sold yet, use your projected revenue, projected expense amounts to do these calculations. So hopefully you've got a budget mapped out for the year. Use the amounts that you're projecting. So if you're projecting 100,000 in revenues and 40,000 expenses, use those amounts. If using the last year, if you don't have amounts from last year because you didn't sell the product. Also, I would say, even if you have prior year amounts, if you've drastically changed the product, or if something big has changed, using last year's amounts aren't necessarily going to make sense for you, right? So, for example, when we do our overhead calculation, let me go back. Here we go. When we do our overhead calculation, and I said, okay, use last year's total revenues, $100,000. Sorry, for the second calculation. So last year's overhead expenses times the overhead allocation percentage. If last year's overhead expenses aren't basically what they're going to be this year, then use this year's projected overhead expenses. Okay, so if you maybe you spent a lot last year in trainings or building up a building, office building or something like that, don't use that number for your overhead. Use what you project your expenses to be in this coming year. Let's go back to our. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Happy to answer questions if that's confusing. So let's dig into an example now, okay? So for step number 1, identifying the who and the how. The who, and this is just an example. I did this sort of in line with my business, and I changed a few things just for the sake of making the example very clear. So the who would be online business owners in the first 0 to 2 years of business. That's who my ideal customer is. The problem is that they need to set up the accounting, tax, and payroll aspects of their businesses, but they don't know how, and they can't afford to hire a CFO or an accountant. That's the problem my people have that I'm trying to solve. The how am I going to solve that problem? In my case, is an online DIY course called Biz Money Blueprint that walks them through each step to set up the financial aspects of their business. So I'm identifying my who, my problem, and my how. And that's the very first step that you must do if you want to create a profitable offer. Because if I didn't understand these things, it is very likely I'm creating something that doesn't serve the people I want to serve, that doesn't solve a problem that they have, and doesn't actually solve a problem, period. Okay, so that's the first step. All right, so the second step in our example, mapping your offer. So the price point in my case is $500. The outputs, so they're going to get a pre-recorded course. They're going to get monthly virtual office hours. They're going to get customer support. The inputs, what do I have to put in to create that, or to offer this offer? So I need time to create and record the course. In my case, it's already done, but I did need that at one point. I need time for annual updates. We're actually going to be doing that in 2021, so that is on my radar. I need time for the monthly office hours because I show up and I support people during those. We need to pay for the online course platform, Kajabi. We also need to provide customer service support via email. So those are all the things I'm going to have to put into the offer. So what I'm doing right there is I'm starting to basically lay out what some of my direct expenses might be, right? Because I'm starting to lay out things that are specifically needed to offer this course. Okay, so step number 3, and again, we're about to dive into some numbers, bear with me, but this is where we're going to calculate the projected profit on this course, this DIY Biz Money course. So the first step, and I actually had them listed in a different order. If you go back on this slide, we really should actually have allocated labor cost first, because you want to know first which labor costs you're going to lump into overhead and which you're going to put in direct expenses. So you actually want to do that calculation first. So that's what we're going to do first here. So in my case, and this is exactly what is the case in my business, true example. So I have a virtual assistant. As I said before, I'm going to include her hourly wages and overhead expenses. I'm not going to try to allocate any of her time to this course. It's just it's just not clear that it's not clear how much I could. She supports everything I do. So her her hourly wages are going to be included in my overhead expenses. My owner's pay, we've already done this math. I'm going to allocate that to my course, my membership, and my coaching. $10,000 a month, 160 hours per month. That's $6,250 for the hourly wage. And then if we take that further, this is where and again, this is real life example. These are actually technically the four things I offer. The four things I'm projecting to offer: my course, my membership, events, because we're going to do an event next year, so that's new, and then coaching. I'm actually reducing the amount of coaching I'm offering, so that's changed a bit. And so if you notice, I've got a column there for how many hours per month I spend. Again, this is an estimate. I also have a column for hours per year, because in some of these examples, so events, for example, the event is a one-time event. So I'm not really spending hours per month on it. I think I'm going to spend 40 hours in total on it. So that's why I've put that in that year column. And then overhead, it wasn't necessary to figure out what the hours per month was for that. I basically subtracted, what is that? 60, oh my gosh, how many hours is that? All right, y'all, I can't do math. It's 1,920 hours. So 160 hours every month is 1,920 hours, minus the 60 hours a year I spent on my course, minus the 120 I spent on membership, minus the 40 I'll spend on the event, minus the 240 for coaching. That leaves 1,460 hours that I'm going to put into overhead. Advertising, marketing, networking, customer service, not client service, admin, legal, financial, all the businessy type stuff, right? So I'm going to take that $6,250, that was my hourly rate, and I'm going to multiply that by those. So that tells me at the end of the day, my $120,000 salary is going to get allocated as follows: $3,750 to my course, $7,500 to my membership, $2,500 to the event, $15,000 to coaching, and $91,250 to overhead. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. So the next thing we need to calculate is that overhead allocation percentage. Remember, we did this already. We're going to do it now with my real life numbers. So again, projected product revenues divided by projected total revenues gets you that overhead allocation percentage. In my case, we're doing this for the course, right? So in my case, I'm projecting $85,000 in revenues for my course. I'm projecting $250,000 in total revenues. That leads to 34% overhead allocation percentage. So then the next step is to actually allocate the overhead. Remember, 34% is our number. This is just for the course. We're not doing it for the membership or coaching. We would want to do those. We're not going to do that in this workshop today. So now we need to allocate the overhead. Again, this is total overhead expenses times the overhead allocation percentage gets us the overhead allocated to the course. So in my case, my overhead expenses are $42,000 for office supplies, advertising, my VA, my website, my email service provider, all those fun things. And again, the $91,250 for allocated wages. Remember, if you go back here, that's what we calculated, $91,250, right? So let me get my little pointer out. This $91,250. That's what we calculated for those allocated wages. So when we're calculating our overhead expenses, we're going to add that to our other overhead expenses to get a total overhead expenses of $133,250. We're going to multiply that by our overhead allocation percentage, and that's going to give us this answer of $45,305, meaning that is what we will use in our profit calculation for the course as our overhead expenses. Cool? Oh, did I go too far? I did. Okay. All right. The next step is to do the projected profit calculation. So again, this is product revenues minus product direct expenses minus allocated overhead expenses. That gets us our product profit. So again, I've already said this. I'm projecting for 2021 to bring in $85,000 in revenues for my course. My direct expenses are the $3,750. Remember, we allocated $3,750 in my salary to the course. There's a $37.50. The $900 is, remember I said I use Kajabi? So I don't actually include Kajabi in overhead. What I actually do is allocate it between my course and my membership because I use it equally for both. It's $1,800 a year. So I'm allocating $900 of that directly to the course because I don't use Kajabi we're not going to use it for the event, and I don't use it for coaching. So I don't want it to be allocated to those two product lines. I want it to be split between the course and the memberships. There's the $900 for Kajabi, the $37.50 for my salary. Those are my direct costs. And then the $45,305, which is the overhead allocated to my course that we just calculated. And that brings my product profit. So at $85,000 of revenues for my course, my product profit is $35,045. Okay. Now, the last step is the projected profit margin. And that's the product profit divided by the product revenues to get the product margin. So again, product profit, we just calculated this, $35,045. Product revenues, $85,000. That's a 41% profit margin. Okay. Now, step number 4 in creating your profitable offer is to assess and adjust. So continuing this example on, I'm listing out my 4 offers that I do here: my course, my membership, my event, and my coaching. I've done the same profit calculations offline so we could have these numbers. So if you're wondering where these numbers came from, I calculated them myself. But here's the $35,045 that we calculated for projected profits for the course, $24,290 for the membership, $91,755 for the event, and $17,690 for coaching. These are the profits. And again, this is after I'm paying myself. Excuse me. So this is true profit. Look at the projected profit margins. The course, 41%. The membership, 35%. The events, 37%. Coaching, 25%. What does this tell me? Number 1, it tells me my course is my most profitable product. Okay. My most profitable product. Now, it also tells me with my membership is at 35%. It's not bad, but my course is at 41%. It's not a huge spread, but it's a decent spread. So what this also tells me is maybe I dial back how much time I spend on my membership. So for example, my time is more expensive than my VA's. Maybe I have her do more in the membership, or even bring on someone else to do more in the membership. Maybe I increase the price of the membership a bit more so I'm making more money on it, or I change up the offer a bit and offer fewer things that require my time. Again, it's not a huge spread, so I'm not that worried about it, but that's something I could consider. The event is at 37%. I'm probably not going to change this that much. The benefit of the event, we're going to be selling at the event too. So the event is both to make money, but also to make money through ticket sales, but also an opportunity to bring on more people. So I probably won't change that, but again, I could change what we're putting into it in terms of my time or other expenses. I could also change what we charge for it. The coaching, 25%. So the coaching, 25% versus 41%, the coaching is the most time-intensive thing that I offer. But it doesn't have nearly the profit margin of the course. So what does this tell me? This tells me that for every dollar I make from my course or my coaching, for every dollar I make, I'm going to get 41 cents if it's from my course, but I'm only going to get 25 cents if it's from my coaching. So in this case, what I probably want to do is either increase my coaching rates, decrease the amount of time I'm putting into coaching, or if I have other expenses, think about cutting those back. So this is the kind of, you want to get this chart going, see where you land, and you want to map it out. Now, I do want to reiterate that profit margin isn't everything. So notice how I said I'm okay with the lower profit margin on my event because it has another purpose. It's not just about ticket sales. It's not just about the thing we're going to sell, although that's part of it. So the purpose of the event is ticket sales, but it's also to build a relationship with my people. It's going to deepen our work together. And the third benefit of it is the offer that we're going to make at the event. So we may actually get profits. We may get, more revenues for these other categories out of the event. that aren't factored in here. So I'm okay with that lower profit margin because I know it's serving some other purpose. My coaching doesn't do that. My coaching people don't tend to then go into my membership or then go buy my course. So for me, to put all of that time into coaching and have a significantly lower profit margin than my course, which is mostly hands off for me, is a big eye opener to say, maybe I don't want to focus on coaching as much. And in fact, this is part of what I'm doing is I'm actually phasing out my coaching work to put more effort into my course, into my membership, which are higher profit margin or higher profits for me. So hopefully that makes some sense. Okay. So I kind of covered some of these, but again, what do you do when you do that assessment and you feel the need to adjust? Increase your prices, decrease your expenses. And that could be, well, I have it in the next bullet, actually. Decrease your expenses, cut down on manual labor. It could be yours, it could be someone else's. It also could mean maybe you cut down on what you do, but you hire someone who is at a less expensive rate to still provide that service. And then also get flexible about what you offer. And I put in parentheses, reuse and maximize. And what I mean here is, so let's talk about reuse first. So reuse would mean take stuff you already have, take stuff you've already created. This is what I've done before. If I do a live workshop that I charge for, well, I'll take the replay of that workshop and I'll sell the replay. Or I'll put the replay into the membership or, add it as a bonus to my course, something like that. So using things you've already created. And then maximize is thinking about how you can get the most out of your offer without sacrificing the quality. We don't want to put something out there that isn't going to serve our people. But for example, I'm doing one-on-one coaching. Could I change that to group coaching, which brings more people on board? Not only does that bring more money on board, but it also brings the opportunity to work with more people, have more impact, deepen more relationships. Could I do that and still do basically the same quality of work I'm doing? If I'm having an event, can I increase the capacity without changing the dynamic of the event? So maximizing what it is that I'm offering. So these are things you want to think about when you put your little chart together and you start to look at where your profit margins are. Okay, so 2 things before we wrap up. And I do really want to show you the profit calculator, so hopefully we're going to have time for that. 2 sort of buyer bewares or don't do's, if you will. The first is to don't set it and forget it. So I always recommend doing profit calculations before you offer a new product. I think that's an absolute requirement so that you know that your pricing and your and the expenses you're going to put into it are appropriate. But I also recommend doing profit calculations on a semi-annual basis. Now, and actually, I want to be clear. I also do them on well, of course, if you're doing semi-annual or doing it annual, but I also do them. So let me back up. I do them at least once a year, if not twice a year. I like to do them twice a year. It gives me, and sorry, I'm like, I've got fuzz everywhere. So some of y'all know, or hopefully you know, that I do money meetings every single month, but I also do every quarter, I do an extended money meeting. So I usually do about 2 to 3 hours versus my normal half hour. And it's typically it typically is the first money meeting after the quarter ends. So for example, Q1 ends March 31st. My April 15th money meeting is typically going to be that 2 to 3 hour meeting. And it's when I sit down and I do a big quarterly review. Well, what I also do is twice a year. So in my case, this would be the July 15th meeting and the January 15th meeting, is I sit down and I review my profit calculations. So I review them for every existing offer I have, and I also create them for upcoming offers. This just helps make sure that what I'm currently offering is, number 1, profitable, and number 2, if we think back to this chart, I'm focusing on the right things. Because if you showed me this chart and said, this is what's going on in my business, and then you told me you were spending 90% of your time on coaching, I would say, stop, immediately get out right now. You should be spending 90% of your time on the course because that's where your highest profit margin is by quite a bit, right? So doing that, ideally on a semi-annual basis, if not semi-annual, at least once a year. And then lastly, if you offer one-on-one services like coaching, for example, or if you offer done for you, so building a website or photography package, whatever it may be, I recommend, if you're just starting out, I recommend reviewing your profit projections, profit calculations for each project. So now we're not even talking about a product line or an offer. We're talking about each project for the first 6 months. And the reason I say this, let's say you're a wedding photographer. The reason I say this is because what I've seen happen too often is people who are in service-based or done-for-you businesses is you know, especially when you're first starting out, you're trying to figure out where to price something and exactly what to offer. And so too often you end up spending more time offering more than you're actually getting paid for. And so your profit, your true profit is pretty low. And again, this is because these types of businesses are very labor heavy. You only realize this if you're taking the time to factor in the cost of your time to realize that you're not getting enough out of it. So I like to do it in those cases after every single project or you know, client, because that gives me a bigger data set to look at and tell, okay, is my pricing right? Are my inputs, you know, my expenses, what I'm putting into this right? And then make adjustments as I need to, okay? And then the second thing, though, my last sort of don't, is don't one and done it. So, and we're not going to get into this at all in this workshop. We have in other workshops, and we will in more coming up. But having just one core offer is risky. So when you look at this chart, I'm not suggesting that once you do this, you should eliminate all of the other offers that are less profitable. That's by no means what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is using this information to choose the ones that are the most profitable and focus on those, because having just one core offer is risky. If all I ever did was coaching, well, what if all of a sudden I had a family medical emergency and I couldn't show up and do coaching every single day? Or what if I lost my voice for 2 weeks? I got laryngitis and I couldn't coach for 2 weeks. Or what if there was a big article about how coaches are scam artists? They're not, I'm not saying they are, but how coaches are scam artists, and all of a sudden the coaching industry dried up. I'd be screwed if that was my only offer. So that's why I have my course, I have my membership, I have coaching, we've got this event that we're going to do. By having multiple revenue streams, you're eliminating unnecessary risk in your business. Now, I do want to caveat this by saying, if you are just starting out, or if you haven't gotten that one thing you offer to a place where it's stable yet, I want you to focus on that. Don't want you to focus on 3 different things or 5 different things if you don't have one rocking and rolling. But once that one gets up and running, you feel good about it, it's stable, it's growing, then I want you to add another one on. Do the same with that one. Get it stable, get it growing, then add another on. So the goal is to get to multiple revenue streams down the road, not immediately. And then lastly, I would say create multiple offers at various price points that serve the same person. This, I think, is actually really important because remember I told you with my event, the benefit of my event wasn't just the ticket price. And we don't have the ticket price set yet, but it's not going to be huge. It's not going to be crazy big. So that's, excuse me, a lower price ticket point, right? But the benefit of the event is there's also going to be the opportunity to, we're going to do an offer at the event. So there's going to be the opportunity to buy into something. That's a higher price point. So offering those multiple offers allows people to go through their journey with you the whole way. That they're not just coming in for one thing and then you have nothing else to offer them, and so they're out and they go work with someone else. So having multiple offers really gives you that ability to serve somebody through a longer portion of their journey. Cool? All right, we have a minute left. I do want to show y'all this profit calculator, and I apologize, it's not in the membership portal. We will get it in there. So give me a hot second. Oh my goodness, where did it go? Here we go. This is also, by the way, because y'all are members, y'all get access to the Biz Money bundle, which we charge other people, I think, $47 for. So, but you get access to all of the tools in the Biz Money bundle. I can't speak it. Biz Money bundle. because you're a member. So, okay. So this is the profit margin calculator. This is for 2020. I doubt we're going to update it for 2021. I don't anticipate that anything's going to really change. I'm just trying to make this big so y'all can see. The first page is always just the CYA, the disclaimer. There is, if you click this link, I don't think it's going to show up on the thing, but it brings up a video on how to use this calculator. So I'm going to do a very, very quick overview, but definitely watch the video. It's not very long. Okay, so this is the calculator itself. The one thing that this calculator does not have, and maybe we'll consider adding it, is the allocated labor calculation. It does not have that. It has everything else. So the way this works, you put your revenue stream, so we could say course, you put your estimated or actual revenues. So again, it would be actual if you want to calculate the profit on a project that's passed. It would be estimated if you're looking ahead. So we're going to say $40,000. You're going to put your expenses here. These are direct expenses. So we could say Kajabi, 900, I don't know, workbook, 300. I'm making stuff up, okay? It's not calculated yet because we have to do overhead and labor costs. So then we're going to come down to our overhead cost rate. This is that overhead allocation percentage. It's going to ask you for total prior year revenues. So we'll just say, let's say 100 grand. And then it's going to ask you for total prior year overhead costs, non-allocable, meaning you can't allocate them to one particular product or another. So we'll just say 30 grand. Okay, so it's a 30%, excuse me, 30% overhead cost rate. Notice how it popped 12 grand up there. Now, again, this is based on prior year. If you know that you're going to have vastly different revenues or expenses this year, then go ahead and put current year numbers in here or upcoming year numbers in here to more accurately calculate that rate. Let me just make this a little bigger. We're going to come down here for labor costs. This is only if you have direct labor. So let's say we had somebody who worked on this at $25 an hour and did 5 hours. I don't know if my costs are. Oh, you know what? Because I'm doing this per product. Sorry. So let's say it was 20 hours. Okay. So it's going to calculate $500. It's going to allocate those labor costs up here. So on something with revenues of $40,000, total expenses of $13,700, $1,200 that are direct expenses, $12,000 that's our overhead allocated, $500 that's direct labor, and that brings our total profits down to $26,300, and it calculates that profit margin for you. Cool. So this does all the work for you. Again, the only thing it doesn't do is it doesn't allocate labor. So for example, if you wanted to allocate my salary, remember we did that in the example, you just would want to enter that as an expense up here. And again, maybe we'll work on adding that into this workbook. So, all right, y'all, we are just at an hour. We're 3 minutes over. Sorry, I apologize for going over. Hopefully this was helpful. I know this was a lot of math, but doing this exercise is really important to make sure that the offers you're putting out there are truly profitable, because again, those profits are what's going to help you invest back in and grow your business. So please let me know if you have any questions. We'll do our Q&A next week. Check out the profit calculator, and I will see you all then. Bye for now.